Hello and welcome, and thanks for staying on till the bitter end. My name is Brynskov. I'm going to be your moderator for the day, well, what's left of it, and we're going to talk about such an exciting thing as standards and indicators, and I'm guessing that everyone in the room is really excited about that. Yes. So we're the hardcore, let's say, remainers in this otherwise very, very impressive program. Last year we did the first session of the whole Congress. It was packed. So I'm thinking the logic here is that they wanted to put the good things that everybody wants to come in the end of the program. So thanks for coming. As I said, my name is Brynskov. I'm chair of the Open Agile Smart Cities Network. That's basically just a lot of cities globally, but linked to national networks that try to find out what are the good standards, what are the good indicators that we can use when we procure, when we make a roadmap to the future for our citizens. So what is at stake here today, I think, is not just for the big cities. We're very happy to have a very big city with us today, so Paris. But it's for every city to find out, and it's actually not for those who live in cities, for every city and community. So it may sound boring to some, but if you ask me, this is the key session of the whole conference. This is what can give us the path to a future that we would want. There are many paths to the future, but I think the cities can really come together and show it. Well, it's not so easy. This is just you could say, the membership of the network that I represent. When there are so many voices in the room, it tends to be a little bit, let's say, fragmented. You have groups that do things together here and there. You have, some work in different ways, different directions. There are different priorities, there are different values, and so on. We have Brexit going on. We have, interesting political climate at the moment in the world. World trade is built on trust. It's built on standards way to do transactions on the global level. So the question is, how can we bring the value of these global dynamics in alignment with some local priorities? You're not going to get elected as the next mayor for fixing the problems on the other side of the world, right? You're not even getting re-elected to fixing the problems in the next city. So how do we work together on global issues while fixing our own? That's the question. Just to say that we work with everyone, but I think we can probably agree in this room. This is what I hear. I travel a lot. I talk to cities, I talk to the market, I talk to those who do standards and indicators. I have some roles myself, but I think this is what we're searching for. So to have a robust model to go out based on standards, not just to buy things that are ready, but also to do the innovation. So standards and indicators are important to bring the good ideas into practice so that they can actually be the basis for people's lives. So that's a roadmap which is quite complex, but let's see if we can get a little closer to that. To be even more, I was going to say, problematic. Okay, we want something that can interoperate. We want to be able to compare. But we want to do it for different reasons. The market, the supply, and the demand side have different reasons for wanting this, and that's one of the problems we're facing. So the supply side, the vendors, of course they want reusability, replicability, and scalability because that gives you scale, that gives you actually a market. Go to the big companies out here, some of them probably in the room. What is the revenue on smart cities, blah, blah, blah? It's not there. On the other hand, the cities, they need these things, but the market cannot supply. So it would be fantastic if there could be actually revenue out there. And interoperability makes it efficient to scale quickly. The cities don't care. They want something else. They want to be able to replace the vendor. They want choice in the market. They want independence. They want value for their money. That's what citizens want. And they want local economic development. But luckily, when you bring those things together, the interoperability does mean that we can reduce the risk, we can increase the investments, and get the innovations. So let's see, we have an excellent panel of speakers today. And we're going to start first with Helen, who is one of the brightest minds on the planet when it comes to even understanding what we're facing, how do we measure what we do and where we can go. So please, I invite you, Helen, to take the stage and enlighten us a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. It is quite challenging to deliver a keynote on standards, so I'll try my best to keep it brief and not to put everyone to sleep. The presentation. Sorry. Technical difficulties. So I'll be talking today about the ISO family of standards for cities that we've developed since 2012 and has been implemented by the World Council on City Data. So as Martin mentioned, my name is Helen Ng. I'm the executive advisor to the World Council on City Data, and I'm also the ISO secretary on city indicators in TC 268, who's responsible for developing this set of ISO standards. So I've been working with cities for the past 10 years in terms of looking at data and how cities, the challenges of data within cities. So we know that data often is fragmented within cities, and it is really challenging for cities to even know what kind of data is available within their own cities, because every department has their own set of data, their own set of KPIs that they measure, and often are not being shared with each other. So the World Council on City Data, what they've been doing, and ISO TC 268, the Working Group on City Indicators have done, is that they've created standards to help standardize the way data is collected for cities based on standardized definitions and methodologies. So the first ISO standard for cities, ISO 37120, was published. There's actually a new edition that's published in July, so there's a new standard out, which has been tested by cities already and implemented. So the standard itself is 100 indicators. These 100 indicators are indicators that cities are already gathering, so they're not new. They're just standardized. The ISO standard just standardizes the way that the definitions standardizes definitions and methodologies so that there is comparison across cities. So there's 17 themes, so it's across education, economy, governance, health, recreation, all the issues that cities care the most about. So the WCCD has been implementing ISO 37120 across the world with cities. So now they have 60 cities certified and another 40 cities that will be certified for a total of 100. So what does the data really do? I'm not going to talk about the importance of data because I feel like the whole conference has been on data. So I'm here to talk about the standards and how standardizing the data helps to facilitate dialogues and conversations with citizens. So recently, the Government of Canada launched a Smart Cities Challenge, and I was helping a couple of cities with their Smart Cities applications. And one of the biggest challenges that we found was that it was really difficult to engage your citizens and have conversations with them about what are some of the challenges that the city's facing. So often, I was on the grounds asking citizens, what are some of the challenges that you think the city's facing? And when I was working at the city of Vaughan, which is outside of the city of Toronto, many of the citizens said that, oh, I want more cameras. The city is not safe. But in fact, when you compare the city of Vaughan to other cities within Canada and internationally, it is one of the most safe cities in the world. So the indicators and what you can do is start asking questions and start having dialogues with your citizens. For example, the indicators on the number of higher education degrees. So how innovative is my city? How do people move around? with the percentage of commuters using alternative transportation.
We will now do
How innovative is my city with the number of new patents?
questions.
How connected is my city? So how many commercial flights annually? How green is my city? So the green space per 100,000. And how prosperous is my city? So the number of businesses per 100,000. And how clean is my air? Of course, air quality is very important. And then level of education, recycling. So there are, of course, many uses for this data and the importance of standardizing it. So there's reports on, how it drives more efficient governance. Of course, there's been a whole conversation about e-governance, and the WCCD does provide a platform for these 100 indicators where cities can go on and see how they compare relative to other cities, just to get a quick understanding of some of the challenges or issues that they might be facing. So once cities are certified by the WCCD, cities are able to use the data for strategic planning, evidence-based decision-making, and year-over-year benchmarking and comparison. So I know that the cities that I have worked with in the past, like the city of Vaughan, they do use the KPIs in order to promote themselves internationally, because sometimes cities are not well known for their name. So they attach them to larger regional cities, or they use, for example, the mayor of Vaughan often talks about how their life expectancy is one of the highest in Canada.
We'll all win the
So, of course, cities can use this data to undertake infrastructure investment, so they can use the KPIs and data to argue that they need funding for specific recycling programs or for specific roads and construction. And also, once a member is once a city is a member, they can be featured in global reports, such as the one on Barcelona. How does Barcelona move? So it provides an assessment report in comparison to how well they compare in terms of other large cities. There's one on city infrastructure, so talking about data-driven investments and decision-making. And it also helps to drive competitiveness strategy and attract foreign direct investment. So recently, Toronto put in a bid for the second Amazon headquarters, and this data was used to aggregate data at the regional level to promote Toronto as a whole in order to attract Amazon to our headquarters. But I don't think we were quite successful. So I don't think they've announced it yet, but and also in the coming year, they will be creating an Investable Cities Index to support cities in their economic development and to drive competitiveness. So often when we talk to cities about what's the most important issue that you're facing, or why do you care about using standardized indicators, and often it's really to attract investment. So that's the key thing that a lot of cities are using this data for. And of course, for smart cities, we all know that data is essential for smart cities. As I mentioned earlier, it is the starting point to have conversations and dialogues with citizens, so it's an important part of citizen engagement. So most of the smart cities challenges that I am aware of, citizen engagement is a large component, and in order for us to have meaningful conversations with our citizens, we really do need standardized data so that we know that what we're talking about, so that they are actually, so that the problems being identified are truly the problems at hand. And of course, there's also linking the indicators to the United Nations SDGs. And the WCCD has produced a report on that, linking all the ISO 37120 indicators to each of the SDGs. So beyond ISO 37120, there's 2 new standards that are under development, and we're almost complete. So one is on indicators for smart cities, ISO 37122. So we were just in Moscow 3 weeks ago, dispositioning all the comments for this standard. So now it is at a final draft stage. It will be probably published in the coming months. probably early 2019. And then there's another one on indicators for resilient cities, which is also the same development stage that will be published as well in 2019. So of course, this is creating a whole family of standards. So within our TC 268, our belief is that smart cities and resilience in smart cities is a means to sustainability. So the overall goal that we're trying to reach is sustainability. So in 2017, the World Council on City Data had its annual conference, and the Dubai Declaration was created as the cities that were part of this conference to be committed to using data as a universal language, so the importance of creating standards and data for their decision making. And there's also a number of networks and partnerships that are also part of the WCCD, for example, private partners, international organizations, and of course the large city network. So the value of municipal data, of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because we are all within the municipal sector and we all know the importance of data for cities. And that is it. I try to keep it brief, so.
So,
do you want to have questions?
yeah, please,
Okay.
please
Okay.
stay. No,
Okay.
and maybe we come here.
Okay, sure.
So, that was very brief. And am I on? And please have some water if you want.
Thank you.
So that was very brief, and I think it is a paradox that something so complex, you talk everything from citizen engagement, so percolating all the way from the streets, all the way up to global standards. Wow. In 7 minutes, so that's an achievement in it.
And I talk very fast, so I think that helps.
Right. So I will ask you a few questions. We'll take a few questions from the floor. So can I ask, how many are involved in standards development in the room? Raise your hands. Okay. 1/5, 1/6. Okay. How many are using standards actively in every day? You can all raise your hands because we all are. The world is built on standards. Come on. I mean, are you on the Wi-Fi? Right. So what is? I mean, how do you even begin? I mean, it's like an elephant.
Yeah.
What are the pieces you propose here? 3, incision points to this challenge. So how do we cut that up? If you're into citizen engagement part, how do you avoid having to know all the rest? Mm-hmm. How do you approach it?
So when I first started getting into this standards space, which was 6 years ago, it was funny because a few weeks ago in Moscow, I was asking a Chinese colleague about his daughter, because I was like, oh, how's your daughter now? And he said, oh, she's 6. She was born after we created this TC. And I was like, I've been spending 6 years of my life developing standards. So I thought that was kind of sad, but also at the same time, it explains the complexity of standards. So when we first started, I had no idea about ISO standards for cities because it's not traditional. I used to do advertising sales, and I remember going to these small companies in Switzerland, and people were so proud of their ISO certification for 9001. So I was familiar with that, but I didn't know that it was possible to create standards for cities.
Just to say, do you all know, like, you can get the standardization of everything, of course?
Yeah.
So could you just explain what does that mean to have a sticker on your front door, or just for those who don't know, what is certification? So the certification really just implies that you are you're in compliance. So I know I often use What's the value?
The value of that is that you're like, I guess they say that you're in conformity to special specifications and qualities. So for 9001 and 14001, which are the most famous ones, the quality product and environmental management. So it's like a stamp of approval. It's something you can rely on. Okay. Yes, exactly. So back to what you're saying, you didn't know that you could make like a certification of a city. So I'm looking, how does a city even gets like, let's say, described? You can have literature, right? You can have the food, you can have the performance. So where do you start when you want to describe a city and certify it? We all know TripAdvisor, is it like that? So you can get like... So
certified.
no, it's not, because what happened is that when we started working with cities, these indicators in the standard are actually developed by cities. So they were the ones that said, what about these indicators for recreation, or what about these indicators for economy or education?
Right.
So they were actually city-driven indicators.
Yeah.
So and what the point of the standard is not to say that a city is sustainable because it does this, but it just provides a framework or a set of indicators that with standardized definitions and methodologies so that the cities can use it as they please. So we're not prescriptive as to tell cities how to use the indicators,
Right.
but it's just helping them collect the indicators so that they can use it as they wish.
So I'm just reflecting. So there is a personal preference. There's also cultural preference. Yeah?
Yes.
So I may like, one city very much, and my wife, she wants to go to Bergen, where it rains all year long, almost. I love Bergen, by the way. The air is so clean because of all the water, right? It's true. So how do you get like the differences in there? How do you converge on something which is in a way personal or cultural, which should not be standardized? So isn't there a contradiction in standardizing something which is, we're different.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So, and that's what we're very careful about doing within our working group, is that we're not trying to standardize that. We're not saying that, let me just give an example. So when we're standardizing, say, an easy one is the number of firefighters per 100,000. We're not saying this, having more firefighters means that your city is more safe or more resilient. What we're saying is that, what is a firefighter? So we're standardizing the definitions for a firefighter so that we know that, a firefighter is a full-time firefighter, not a volunteer firefighter. So it's more just minor little details. So we're not saying that this city is better because it has better air quality. That's not up to us to judge, but it's up to the cities or whoever wants to do that assessment.
So what happens? Can you go, turn it up to 11? Can you go like max on all indicators, and then you're like the perfect city?
I don't know if you can be the perfect city.
No, but can you, if you have indicators and the goal is to be up high, the logic would be, let's try and go high. Can you do that?
You mean to perform?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's all perspective, right?
Okay.
So for me, I think the most important thing in working with cities is actually helping them identify their challenges and helping them come up with solutions. So the indicators are not meant to be used as, we are the best at this, and let's get all these indicators so that we can be at the best of that. Some cities may use it for promotion and investment attraction in that sense, but there's also multiple uses.
Okay.
And it's not a rating system. So
no, but that's the thing. So
we
what
don't
is
want to rank.
What is it then? If it's not a ranking system, by by the very fact that you now can measure.
Yeah.
Could that even be like a negative thing of standardizing? That you also become, let's say, in a way, yes, you become transparent, but what if you don't agree with let's say, the measures?
Yeah,
so just to go back to your example, if volunteer firefighters is how you do it best in an area, you score low by comparison.
Yeah.
Or?
Then that's the prescriptive part that I said, that we don't say that,
But you make it visible.
Yes, it's open. So what we're trying to do is open the data so that people can access it and use information. And that is the challenge, to be honest.
Okay.
Sometimes cities, especially mayors, don't want to know that, where they're not performing well. Or they don't want, I'm going to use...
Are you sure?
I'm going to use a Chinese example. So sometimes, in China, we heard that there's a lot of issues with the number of police officers because they don't want to disclose their police officers. But for us, in North America, it's a very common, information that's available online.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. So may I ask here now, towards the end, so what is the role of data then in that? Is there a link between the indicators? Because I guess the numbers for the indicators you said there's access to it, so also that becomes data.
Yeah.
The performance is based on data that comes in. So it used to be from the statistical bureaus and so on, but now we have sensors everywhere, so you can do real-time agile governance in principle. So does that, the first question, is there a connection between how we manage data
Yeah.
and make it available, and then the indicators? So that's the first question.
Okay, so to answer that question, so there is a data management standard that is being developed by, I think it's being led by China within our TC268, and I'm not a technical expert in that, so I cannot speak to that. But the whole idea is that for our TC to create standards where they do complement each other.
Right.
So the set of indicators that we've created, they're static. They're not real-time data. So how we manage the real-time information, that's a separate standard.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Because the real-timeness of the smart city does something. I mean, do you want real-time democracy so that you can vote for the mayor every day? So you're familiar with the Swiss system, which
Yes.
is very interactive.
Yeah.
So you know the joke about Brexit that the Swiss gave? Brexit, that's just because they're not used to voting. Right? So is there something about the real-timeness making it very visible how, well, governments perform for sure, but how society, I wouldn't say perform, but unfolds? Is there a challenge to making that available?
Yeah, so I think I can give you an example. I know the city of LA and the city of Boston that we have worked with in the past. What they do is their mayors, of course, have a dashboard with real-time data, and they often complement that data with the static data from the standard, so that they can do that comparison, because often they can look at the real-time data for more kind of fast, efficient decision-making on the spot, but then look at the static aggregated data for more of an international comparator, or this is how we stand kind of broad perspective.
Interesting, because I work on the ISO and ICU side on actually merging the two, because you have a city, you have historical data, and you also have real-time data. So I think on the ground it's becoming a problem if we see them as something else.
Yeah.
All right, so we are close to the end. Do we have a question from the audience? You can walk to the side and stand by the microphone. There's also the app that you've been using over the 3 days. Please send your questions and they will be picked up if you want. So may I then invite you to reflect on a final question? So what are the next steps? We will be hearing now from an excellent panel of people who are doing things. We know of the giant things that are happening in China, in Korea. I mean, Asia seems very, very to the forefront. I'm going next week for next month for a week to Japan. So really, everyone is trying to get that, not just but really globally. So how do you see, having worked so long, what is the next step for this movement, if this is a movement or this transformation?
And so I think we had this conversation earlier about making sure that we align all the various different standards that are out there, because every day there seems to be a new standard for cities.
Right. Yeah.
And and so cities are very often confused. What do I use?
Right.
But it's really up to cities, I would say, of what they want to use it for and how they want to use it.
Sure.
And I think that's what we'll hear some of the real life applications of the standards are. But that's, I think, the whole point of the whole standards development process is to put it out there so that it becomes open, it becomes transparent, it becomes, cities can use it and it's made available. So
in standards terms, does that then become a meta standard? So there's a standard to navigating the standards?
I think the Germans are trying to do that within our technical committee, trying to standardize standards, I guess. I'm not sure yet.
Good luck with that. And especially since it's the Germans doing it, it will work. Okay, thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.
Interesting. So we now know how to look at the world because we have standards for that. I now invite some people on the stage from Paris, from Bloomberg, who are actually doing something about it. So please welcome the CIO of Paris, Madame Lanouar. And from Bloomberg Associates,
I'm
Todd.
Todd Asher.
Yes. So no chair for me, I can see.
Oh.
Right. I'll stand. No, I don't need a chair, please. I don't want a chair, actually. No, that's fine. So, so now here, in principle, everything is fine, and the standards developing organization, they got it all covered. Okay? So, yeah, there's a clicker. It's here. I'll get it for you.
Thank you.
So in principle, that's all very good and fine, right? And so they claim that the cities are providing requirements, wishes, describing their needs. It sounds so easy. So tell me, from Paris, what is your vision? I mean, how do you navigate? Every day you have to take decisions that is not just in principle and, that's in practice. How do you manage that? How do you go about doing it? Can you give us some insight in what you do?
I can say that similar to other cities, Paris has to address new issues for climate change, increasing urbanization, or all these issues we all know. And at the beginning of her mandate, Mayor Hidalgo and her team has launched a very important program for a smart and sustainable city, for
Right.
smart and sustainable Paris. And it was built around 3 pillars:
Okay.
connected city, open city, and sustainable city.
Right.
So to be concrete, I can give you some examples about what we are experimenting or doing. For example, we are now experimenting a driverless shuttle in the park of Vincennes at the east of Paris with 5 stops, and it has already transported, I think, more than 30,000 passengers.
Okay.
We also launched a program to reinvent Paris. To reinvent Paris means how can we now live in a new kind of buildings with mixing culture, social housing, artistic, and all these way of life. We also have now a new data center. It's all our IT system. It has moved on a data center in the north of Paris.
Okay.
And all the IT systems are now hosted in this data center. And it's a sustainable data center because the excess energy is recycled in heating circuits of the districts where it is housed. And it will be our infrastructure for our data platform and for all our applications and data collected from sensors on the city. So I'm in charge of the IT department.
Right.
And as a CIO, I have to support all the Data City program from for the digital services, the back office applications, all the telecommunication. We have a network optical fiber of 600 kilometers underground, thanks to Baron Haussmann.
It's like the virtual metro.
So, and we also work for digital services because citizens must do all their requests and via digital way.
Right. Yeah.
And now we are trying to share our platform and our IT systems.
So this is fantastic. We have the most well-known city of cities in the world doing all of that. So we come back to that in a moment. May I just switch to you? Joshua, from the international perspective, how is it to be working with Paris, to be looking at their ambitions?
Right.
It's a pretty tall order, right?
Right.
To just get Paris sorted.
Right.
How does it look from your side, your perspective? What are you doing?
It's a tough job to work in Paris, of course, but it's great. We've been working together for a couple of years now. I'm part of a group called Bloomberg Associates, which Mike Bloomberg, who was mayor of New York for 12 years, set up after being mayor, with the idea, as part of his philanthropy, to help improve the lives of people who live in cities. And he's pledged to give away all of his money in his lifetime towards these efforts. And so after 12 years as mayor, he created basically a mobile city hall. So a team of about 35 people in 9 different disciplines. I'm part of the media and digital strategies team. And we've worked in about 12 cities since 2013. Typically we work with a city for about 2 years, sometimes a little bit longer, and we identify priorities of that city. We also worked on a program that included Paris that was a bit broader. We looked at 22 cities around the world and what they're doing to deliver service to residents using digital technology. So that could be SMS texting, it could be artificial intelligence, email communications, different ways to engage with citizens. And as part of this report, which we put online, we looked at case studies from different cities. So we're lucky to be working not just in Paris, but in Helsinki, and Athens, and Houston, Texas.
Just to know, so this stuff is available online?
Yes.
So if you want to, if you
go
happen to be a CIO without a clue?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's a good
They don't
primer.
exist.
Exactly, thank you. It does give a baseline for what cities are doing, and then it gives some clear examples of how they're using those tools in innovative ways. And Paris has a very innovative tool called Lutece, which we've profiled in it as well.
Could we get to know more about this tool? Can you tell more about, I mean, maybe what it is and why?
So what is Lutece? Lutece is an open source based platform,
Yeah.
Java open source platform. And it was created
slide?
at the
Do we
beginning
have something to show?
in
to go back.
2001. It was a political decision to choose a free and open source platform for the 20 websites of the 20 districts, because in Paris we have a city hall and we have also 20 districts with a mayor in each district. So they had to develop websites for these districts on open source platform. So they didn't find at that moment tools and solutions on the market. So it was decided to develop a Java platform and to develop these websites on the Java platforms, which was called Lutece.
Okay.
And it was also decided to put it on the free domain.
Sure.
And it expanded very quickly because just after they developed the intranet, so the intra-Paris platform on this technology. And it was continually adapted to the new technologies, which were changing continually. And when in 2014 Mayor Hidalgo was elected, we had to launch and to develop very quickly new digital services, and especially participatory services, like a participatory budget.
So what does that mean, participatory budget?
I'm going to explain to you. We had just 3 months to develop the first participatory budget of Paris. So Lutece was available, was mature, was secure, and we developed this first very emblematic project on this platform. And we did it in the time requested, as requested.
So the concept of participatory budget was available?
Yes.
So it was like how to support
it? Was available, and Paris has committed 500 million euros of her budget from 2014 to 2020 to projects proposed by citizens and voted after. So
it's the largest one in the world.
It's the largest one in the world. And just after this first digital service, at the beginning of the mandate, the current mandate, the demand of digital services was expanded very quickly, and we were very lucky to have this platform to develop them very quickly and in a safe way.
Fantastic. So you make immediately the link from all the things we saw in the beginning. So it's readily available, it's fast, it's scalable. You can go to the market,
Yes.
have different proposals
Yes.
for price, for like the agreements and so on. So if I may invite you to reflect. So is that a model that can scale? I mean, does it work? Paris is pretty big, but does it scale to other cities? So it seems like it's what a lot of cities are trying to find out, right?
I think absolutely, and you'll see from some of the other examples, this is the non-emergency reporting platform that they built for.
Say that again, it's the what?
It's the non-emergency reporting, so potholes, street lights.
Not the police, not the fire
police,
department,
but everything else
like
that city services
can wait until
would.
tomorrow.
Exactly.
Images on public space, for example,
Right,
or
like fix my street.
Yes.
like
Now.
Fix
On
My
my
Street,
street.
exactly.
Indeed.
But
Exactly.
we have 200 applications now. Also,
Okay.
a private account for the citizens. They can create their account and they have a dashboard, a 360 degrees dashboard. They can follow their request and exchange information with the city hall.
Okay.
So I can speak about many examples.
I have a very challenging question, but maybe we wait until later. So what is the international
It's
perspective?
huge. I think it's very important, and it's great. What Paris wants to do is to franchise this, to create a development community. Pierre Lévy, who's with us today, is the grandfather, if you will, of Lutece. And part of the goal of Paris is to bring open source software to the rest of the world. So at no charge, allow cities to be able to use this platform. Different from commercial products, it was developed by people who work in municipal government, who know the challenges of doing that. And what would be desirable is for other cities to adopt the use of Lutece so they can create modules and services and then give those back in the same way that the open source community works outside of municipal governments. So we were fortunate to have Pierre and his colleagues Philippe to come to Baltimore recently, to Johns Hopkins University, and we performed a hackathon with 500 students from Johns Hopkins, which is a prestigious university on the East Coast, and students across the US, and they completed the first ever civic hack using Lutece. And they've developed a module that allows people to find homeless shelters and find beds that are available that night. So anyone that has services related to homeless support can tap into this and can immediately find out where to send somebody for support. But it's one of 200 applications that Paris has already developed.
400 modules.
And 400 modules.
For example, one module is to take appointments with the city hall in any domain, and maybe it takes 3 days to implement it for a city.
Super interesting. Some next steps. What would be the next step? I mean, so there are other people working on these, let's say, philosophies. Some people are also concrete, not just philosophizing. So how does that fit into that movement? So Paris contributes with a vision, with a track record unparalleled. So what are the next steps towards bringing something not just for Paris, but like in the beginning? I mean, how can you both solve the problems of Paris and help others, maybe some that are also have some experience a little bit? Where does the convergence in this come?
The platform is available. And for example, city of Lyon and region of east of France has chosen this platform for their CRM software or for their digital services. So in France, the next step is to develop and to promote Lutece and to work with the other cities, because now they have the same needs, so they have to develop very quickly digital services, CRM, and the CRM of the proprietary solutions are not adapted to our needs. Because we have in a city, we have more than 300 business units. In a private company, maybe you have 10,
Yeah. It's
20.
simple.
But
City is complex, huh?
yes, it's very complex, and we can't adopt a proprietary solution. So now in France, I think that it's the same need for all the cities, and they are now beginning to use Lutes platform. And it's the same for the international, because the platform is in Java. Java is an international open source language.
Sure.
And it's completely at the state of art of the technology. It's safe. Nothing is completely safe, but it's safe. We don't have problems of service, continuity of service. So I hope that the next step is to share with another big city in the world.
So may I ask also, because we have some government representatives here, so what is this perspective from, let's say, who can help? You say that is now being promoted. So what is the role of national governments in this? Can they support? I mean, is there a role for national government, or are the cities just fixing it themselves?
Yeah, the cities can decide to adopt Lutes.
Yes.
They can also contract with partners like the big IT companies of the world. We work with 4 IT companies.
Okay.
They have Lutes skills now. There is a school of Lutes in Nantes, in the west of France.
Okay.
And I think maybe it needs few months, 2 or 3 months, to develop Lutes skills in a city.
Right.
Internally or with a partner.
And cities are tricky things, right?
They're tricky, but
so Todd, So can you give some perspective on that? We're coming here to an end. So from your perspective, how does that move on? I mean, so what in practice?
Exactly.
How can you join? I mean, if you already have some capabilities.
Just put your hand in the air.
Yeah, but then what will then happen? I mean.
So there's a number of things. One is there's some consultation that we can do, that also the City of Paris can do with an interested city. We have support from Accenture and other companies who do training, again at no cost, to get cities able to use these resources. There's resources online as well that can step you through that process. But certainly if there's anyone here who's interested, please approach us afterwards. We'll be here and we'll be very happy to talk with you about it.
You can also come to Paris.
Yes,
have
of course.
Demonstration of the.
I think we all will.
Of the platform, of the applications, and you can also visit our website and see our budget, participatory budget application, which is available because now we have closed the campaign, but it's online. You can see the projects.
So, coming back to the point from Helen before, now everything is transparent. You can even book an appointment with the mayor. You can vote for the budget.
Right.
You can vote for the mayor. Why not make it all participatory budget? 100%, not 500 million, all of it. We can govern
all the budget.
Yes. I mean, that's a logical consequence. We don't vote every 4 years or 5 years or 10. We vote every minute. Why not?
I think it's a political question.
I think it's a political question too, but I think it very quickly becomes
an
issue.
But it's technically completely possible.
That's the point, and you know, when something is possible, somebody's going to try it.
It's completely possible technically, but politically it's another question.
So, I mean, who would be crazy enough to do that? Maybe that one will be elected and it will happen. So maybe we should also think about to prepare for that situation when everything is transparent and you're on election every day.
Maybe in the Netherlands first.
Right, or
you
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Let us know how it goes.
All right, give a big hand to our colleagues here for sharing their practical experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. No questions?
No.
And now I have a very important announcement. I have 2. First, you need to stay just now because we're going to take a photo of all the speakers of both sessions.
Okay.
The rest of you, we take a short break. It's 15 minutes. But we continue right after the break. There's coffee in the back. But please come back and we turn to Korea, China, and more real reality with the big Indian mission also being discussed here. So please come back in 15 minutes or stay in the room as you wish. We will continue. Thank you. Stay connected and drink coffee. So welcome back. We continue now with a panel discussion chaired by the excellent Tanya Marcos. Please, Tanya, come while I introduce you. And also I invite the speakers to take the seats here. So Tanya is the tornado in Spain, ensuring that the national government level, the local government level, and everything in between, and the standards organizations, and the markets, and everything around, even the islands, somehow are talking to each other, and standards is a very important part in that. But standards are hard to make, right? You can make very, standards that work, but have detrimental effects. So getting all the stakeholders involved somehow needs a national mandate, maybe even an international mandate. And we have representatives here from some quite big countries. So thank you, Tanya, for coming here and for taking the role of moderating this.
Thank you very much, Martin. And thank you for all of you to stay in this last day of the Congress and the last hour. And please don't hesitate to prepare your questions for after the panelists' interventions. I'm very glad to have been honored to moderate this table. And I really think that I'm a person passionate for standardization. And I am very happy to see that the speakers in this session are contributing to the development of these international standards and in the promotion and also using them, because the most important thing is to check the viability of all the work that is being done and always to continue improvement. They also have a strong commitment to link the research and development projects and put them into standardization work so that the knowledge can be shared and used by all the cities around the world. We have Mr. Dapeng Zhang from China that I will introduce later, Mr. Rahul Kapoor from India, and Mr. Jung Hoon Lee from Korea. Thank you. So please, Mr. Dapeng Zhang.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dapeng Zhang from China, and I'm currently working as the Executive Secretary General of China National Smart City Standardization General Working Group. And also, I'm currently working with ISO IEC JDC1 Working Group 11 as the editor. And also, IEC System Committee on Smart Cities, Working Group 1 Secretary, and also a TC 268. Nice meeting you all, guys. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rahul Kapoor. I'm Director of the Smart Cities Mission of the Government of India, and I'm in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And right now, we are currently implementing Smart Cities Mission in 100 smart cities. And I would be talking about that, how we went through the challenge process, how it's different from the existing strategies that the government had been doing, taking till now in India, and what are the key challenges in basically comparing these cities, ranking them, and trying to move from an input-based to an outcome-based strategy and planning. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jung Hoon Lee. This is my 5th time that I'm coming to the Smart City World Congress. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been working on the smart city for the last 10 years, especially on the indicators development. Last year, I presented a report on the 10 smart city comparative studies based on the Smart City Index program. Currently, I'm the leading on the role on the research projects on the national smart city R&D projects, which is very exciting for the Korea to moving forward to along with the 4th industrial revolution as well. So we are very looking forward to see what are the key trends right now comparing the 20 cities. Thank you.
Right. So today's I'm going to give some China's experience and practice about smart city standards and evaluation. About why we need this general working group and what we have done on smart city standard and evaluations. And the last part, I will share some our practice. So as we all know that China has a very big government, which means that the government is very powerful and influential on the market and the economic. which means that it is very important how the government is setting out policies and giving the guidance to the market. So I have summarized the recent years, the keywords of the government from a national level of the smart city field. So from the year 2013, we have done some pilotings by individual departments. And so that year, the keyword is piloting. So the 2014, we find out that the perspective of an individual department is very constrained. They don't have a system thinking across department. So which means that city needs a top-level design. So that year, the keyword is top-level design. And after that, we switch to a standard system. So what is that? I will give, the later slides, a detailed explanation. And from the year 2016, the keyword is evaluation. We use evaluation as a promotion and guidance and innovation of the guidance of the smart city. And so in the middle is our general working group. So we work under the guidance of 26 departments. And we established in the 2014, we do some research about the strategies and the standard indicators, assessment, and intermediation across the department. So here are all the departments. NDRC, Ministry of Information and Industrial Technology, and MOST, and Public Security, SCC, Ministry of Finance, Land Resource, and MOHERD, Ministry of Commerce, and so on. So this is what we call the smart city standard. So we have used more than 1 year to summarize what currently that already exists standards that's relevant with smart city. Either they are a national standard, or they are a city level standard, or they are industrial standard. So after 1 year of collection, we get over 8,000 standards that is relevant with the smart city. So after a discussion of the expert from the different field and domain, we set up this what we call the smart city standard systems. So there are 7 categories of the whole systems. We have a general standard, supportive technology, and construct and living and economy and whatever. So we use this system as a blueprint of our future standardization work, which means that when we are setting up standards, we will make the most important or most needed standard first, and each of the standard will map back to this blueprint. Till the end of this year, we will publish over 30 national standard. One of them is a very important one is GB 33356-2016. It's smart city indicators that we use to evaluate the performance of cities in China. Yes, so in the middle is our working group, and we work from the international level. Also we have Chinese experts registered with different organizations, IEC, JTC, ITUT, and using this general working group as a platform, we have a monthly meeting, or every 2 months we will work together to discuss about the current state of art of international standardization to make sure that we are consistent both at home and internationally. So publications, we got some white papers, books, standards. About evaluation, so our smart city evaluation is officially launched in the year 2016. And so when you are doing evaluations, you need indicators. So here are the basic principles of setting up indicators. So it should be a very, covering all aspects, but we don't want too many indicators. It should be very reasonable. And it should be leading to the future development, and it should be very easy to use, and which means that you have to know how you can get the data and to get a score of over the indicator or evaluation, and it should be scientific and reasonable. So here is our smart city indicators. We have 7 first-tier indicators and 21 second-tier indicators, and totally we have 54 score points of the whole indicators. So at the end of year 2016, we use these indicators do evaluations all over China. And after these evaluations, we get the feedback of over 280 cities. We got some of the very interesting findouts. So like the relevance of the economy development and the smartness of the cities, and about the balanced situation of the development. And we also get some very interesting results by the economic area or certain area across China. So it was, the full report is launched in September in Shenyang, but currently we just has a Chinese version. We are working on the English version. I hope we can share it with you guys quite soon. And the last part is about our bilateral cooperations. We have launched the China-UK standardization collaboration, and we launched International Smart City Research Institute and Cities Club. And we are doing pilotings, benchmarkings about standards and indicators. And the first set of pilot cities includes Westminster, Yinchuan, and Shenyang. And another one is at the early stage of bilateral collaboration is that the China-Vietnam bilateral collaboration. So it's guided by the ICC China and MIC Vietnam. And we are also using this cycle to do modifications to indicators. So after 2 years of piloting and deploying the indicator to the cities, we find that some of the indicators are not very good, and some of them are not very good granular. So we are using this cycle to give modifications of the indicators. So about this year and beyond. So still we will work on the International Smart City Research Institute and the Cities Club, and we will focus on standards, indicators, and we will think about city needs and looking for projects. And of course, we are calling for participants. Thank you very much.
Raul, please.
Thank you. Okay.
You are next. Raul.
Yeah, I think it takes time to get the presentation up. So I'll basically start giving you a brief about the Indian Smart Cities mission. The mission started in 2015 with the objective of improving the quality of life of the citizens of the country and providing basic core infrastructure. We decided to go with a challenge process in the selection of these cities first. Normally, the usual way of doing things is that the selection of cities would be from the top-down approach, but herein, we decided to actually go through a competition process and getting the citizenry involved in actually deciding that how they would like to make the city smart. So the entire Smart Cities mission of India is based on the principles of cooperative and competitive federalism. So if you look at it, we have been talking a lot on standards since morning, and the need for them has already been discussed. So the strategy that the Indian Smart City Mission undertook was to basically select these 100 cities, which submitted their smart city proposals based on either of the three strategies. Either they could go for a retrofitment, or a redevelopment of existing infrastructure, or a completely greenfield project. It could have been a combination of any, but the idea was that in the spirit of cooperative federalism, these schemes would have had to have consultations with the citizens, with the public representatives, with the stakeholders, and only after going through 2 rounds of selection were these cities finally chosen. The approach is different again, that instead of a silo-based approach, we went for an area-based development or a pan-city initiative so that we could have a coordinated development in the cities. Different projects being undertaken, sometimes there's an overlap and it leads to implementation challenges and extra effort, duplication. So to avoid all that, it was decided that instead of implementing these projects through the existing system of different departments undertaking them, we decided to create an SPV or special purpose vehicle company in each of these cities that would undertake these projects. So there were 4 rounds of competition, and these 100 cities have been completely selected, starting from 20 cities in the month of January 2016, to the last city of Shillong being selected in the month of June 2018. Again, the bright thing is here that we have different kind of projects being implemented. The projects range across these 13 sectors, from solid waste management to mobility, and each city is different. They have their different requirements, different key pressing challenges. So the idea was that when the cities would come up with the smart city proposals, each city would have a different strategy. So for example, a city like Bhubaneswar would have a very different strategy than a city like Kakinada. So every city came up based on their citizens' requirements or the city's requirement. So a city like Goa would focus more on tourism-related projects to make the city smart. Or a city like Guwahati, which has a river flowing through it, would focus more on riverside development or riverfront development. We decided to have some key outcomes in implementation of these projects. The outcomes were defined, but again, the whole reason for being here and discussing it is whether there are measurable indicators or standards available to actually gauge or judge that whether you've been able to achieve these outcomes or not. Some of the innovation snapshots, they are very new technologies that are being implemented, and for the first time when things are happening, then you need to actually see and understand that what kind of indicators you need to have to measure them. Because there's a huge experiment happening in smart cities all over the world. Technology being implemented in one place, whether you have sufficient number of use cases, or whether you have sufficient examples of successes that can be replicated to another city. Those indicators would be very different from one city to another, and these are the challenges that come up when you decide to define these indicators. The data availability is definitely an issue. Many a times, the data is either not available or it is unreliable. Data is kept by different agencies or sources. There's no coordinated effort sometimes. And then, if you're trying to measure these outcomes, the comparisons may actually go off. So when the objective is to have an outcome-based approach in policy and planning, from an input-based approach that has been the traditional way of doing things, you need to have data. A lot has been talked about data challenges. You need to have a standardized frameworks, and there is definitely a potential of data analytics. So we, in the mission, have decided to identify a couple of strategies on how we are going to address this issue of creating an indicator for our cities. So the first thing we did was create an ease of living index, which I'd be talking about. There's very little time, and I think we've already done a discussion on the need for open data and an urban data exchange. So we launched our Ease of Living Index in 2018 August. That was on 13th August, we launched our first index, which was based on basically these 4 pillars of institutional, social, economic, and physical infrastructure. And there was basically 78 indicators, and these 78 indicators were selected through a very consultative process amongst the citizenry. And these indicators are in alignment with the SDG goals that have been set. And 30 of these indicators actually measure SDG 11, which is very relevant for the smart cities, which talks about sustainable cities and communities. There are 15 categories that we have divided these indicators into, from power supply to mobility to safety and security to assured water supply. And there are around more than 500 questions under each of these categories. There was an extensive work done by the team in the field to get these indices. And after that, it was launched. And of course, yes, no cities are same. Being such a diverse country, we decided to undertake it not only for the 100 cities, but 111 cities, which were willing to participate in this Ease of Living Index exercise. So we decided to categorize the cities based on population. So cities were being compared from apple to apple and oranges to oranges, and not across the whole basket of fruits. We had to assign some weightages, that which pillar would have what kind of weightage, so decided to go on a 25, 25, 5, 45. Of course, these were the initial thoughts because it was the first time that these indicators were being framed. And there are things, there are loopholes, there are some missing links because data is not available. Sometimes you don't have an output or outcome-based indicator to actually assess, so you actually have to rely on an input-based indicator. For example, when it comes to water, so sometimes you have to actually see that how much water supply is actually being pumped by the city. So looking at all this, the next step would be to have an ease of living index too. And we are already in the consultative process in our cities. And there have been a lot of thoughts that have come through this challenge. And because sometimes cities say that, why are we lower down in the index? It's a simple thing. Having a common index to measure the same kind of parameters across all cities is a very big challenge. A city like Goa, which may be a completely tourism hub, may not have the same kind of infrastructure or resources that a hill station like Dharamshala may have. So this becomes a key challenge which we want to address in our ease of living index that we'll be launching in 2019. And it's definitely a work in progress. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. And these indicators will evolve as we get better data, better analytics, and finally, we will have better comparisons between our cities. So thank you very much.
Dr. Lee.
Right, so I'm the last speaker, and last speaker of last day session. So I'm going to share with you what are the key trends right now in the smart city development as well. So my indicators is actually talking about what is the progress of the smart city right now in the other city around the world in 20 cities. So what I see the smart city as is more regional innovation platform that actually solving the urban problems. And that's the kind of definition. And that definition has been evolved over time as well. This is 8 trends or 8 aspects that I'm looking at as a smart city. I'm going to share with you only 4 trends right now, and the rest of the 4 will be released at the end of this year or early next year in 2019 as well. These are the word cloud that we've been analyzing about 993 smart city services, apps, and then also the 386 projects and the 249 infra services with 169 living labs that are going on right now in 20 cities. Trend 1 is I'm thinking about the urban openness. This is a very key concept, and also the citizen engagement with open data becoming the very dominant concept driving the smart city right now at the in modern world right now. You can see the empowering citizen, which was the key phrase for the last year, the Smart City World Congress. We wanted to have a look at what are the citizen engagements through the online or offline. What are the cities actually resolving what kind of problems? So we actually identified the demographic of this platform, what role of citizens are doing within this area. For example, like demographic participants are actually the one, the Paris was mentioned about the participatory budgeting or voting, whereas the data collectors are actually citizens themselves becoming the data collector, measuring the air quality or like that. The smart city as a problem solver is the kind of concept that they try to solve the problems to come out with some of the policies or some of the ideas or some of the prototypes. Data that's very important to understand what kind of problems are they engaging. They are mainly engaging with the energy and the transportations as well. Second thing, the open data becoming very important asset of the driving the smart city. And we measure all 20 cities with the different things. As you can see, the color of more color diverse is they have a more diverse of the open data, whereas the right side of the angle is showing the kind of the utilizations. So if you have a more picture of these things, you are actually using this open data into the services more frequently as well. So they are the kind of the trends right now in the Asia. So you can see some of the trends that actually the comparative between the Asia and also in United States and Europe. Service innovations that most 20 cities actually focus on. We come out with the transportation is the largest sectors that they're actually driving right now on the services of the smart city, and followed by the culture and tourism recreations as well. These are the cities actually with many categories. There are service, I call it a service demographic, and they have a very different kind of services. London, Seoul, and Shanghai, and Singapore, and New York will actually rank as quite highest cover the service coverage, whereas most of some other cities actually focus only heavily on the transportation. These are the kind of a category that we actually rank as the kind of a Seoul, New York, and London's are actually quite high area to actually driving the service category diversity, whereas a number of services are compared as well. We also looking at the urban intelligence as well as how these emerging technologies are actually embedded in the services and in terms of the infrastructures or services. We look at all this kind of 993 and 249 infrastructure projects to see what are the they're using the emerging technology, such as IoT, such as a blockchain or big data or AI. So they are the kind of the area that they're using in energy and transportations as well. Some of the services are using the city government, and we see some of what chatbot was using in terms of they using the smart city services as well. Last things I want to share with you, the governance is a very important aspect to see when you progress in the smart city as well. So I look at the 5 different categories of the smart city governance, looking at how cities are actually showing the leaderships, dedicated organization, also what are the strategy they have, what are the indicators they have, and also what are the kind of legal support or systems that they can actually fostering the innovations. So the other kind of scores that they come out. Amsterdam came as a quite high scores that they are actually driving quite faster innovations, followed by the Singapore as well. There are some other cities that are actually doing this kind of leadership. More looking at things, strategy focus on the smart city. Some cities actually focus on the specific area, whereas about 45% of the cities are actually focusing on the more comprehensive smart city as well. Whereas some of the cities are dedicated organization was driven by the IS department, or some of the development was actually done by the economic and development as well. So there are kind of governance settings issues here that who are actually leading on this type of the smart city projects. One thing we noticed was actually there are a lot of cities actually moving forward to actually appointing the chief data officer as well. I think that this shows that the data-driven city becoming very important. For example, the Seoul Metropolitan is actually planning to have a very big data integrated platform projects, collecting the old data and providing this data into the more valuable asset for the next generation. So that's the kind of the trends that I can show you as well. To get this Smart City Index report, you can actually download from here. This is last year, the comparative report. It's written in English. We're going to release this report, 20 cities comparative. We are aiming for the 30 cities next year. And you can have a look at the thing. Each report has got each city's kind of evaluations on what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of the things as well. My report is not actually, the indicator is not talking about what it is, but it is actually the current development of how smart cities should be proceed into the more in better kind of situation as well. So that's the kind of concluding my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have now some time for questions from the audience. If if you have any question, you can ask for the microphone. I wanted to stress what it has been shown here, the importance of having a political willingness to support this type of trip to become a smart city. It's not an easy decision. It's in the human nature to want to be just to have the things just like the neighbor, but you also have to think about your own specificities. So the best first step is to start with that diagnosis. What do you want to become in the future? What do you have now? And drive that path. The standardization work is really necessary as a technical tool, not political, but technical tool that will offer simple solutions to very specific items. We have also to think that there's no one single standard. We don't have a recipe for becoming a smart city. It's a combination of many different factors. it's good to have that, as many data as possible, but you will have to know what you want to do with all that information, and if you need that to measure yourself. Obviously, if you don't measure, you can't improve. That's the rule number one. And another of the things is that you are all doing this for your citizens, that at the end they have to perceive the efforts that the governments are putting on this. So all the participation has to be in the very beginning of the process, otherwise they will never receive that perception of what all this system is doing for them. Because again, if you just perceive something, it's not until you move to another city that then you can compare on the service. We are now in a new area of everything as a service, mobility or whatever. So this is a very good thing, and again, use the standards, please. And standardization work is open to everyone. Everyone can join those standardization work at national level. So please go ahead. We need many hands. Thank you. And we have any question? Do you want to say anything else?
I think when I try to make this time under the 8 minutes, I missed some of a very important aspect. I think in order to become a data-driven city, I think the importance of the now is also the standardization of the data is very important. Also, the challenge here is actually the data quality problems as well. So in terms of you have to identify the very valuable data, how this data can be used into the service, whether this service can be actually with the different sectors are combined or convergent. For example, like transportation or healthcare, their data combined together to providing the information about what are your health effects when you're actually taking some particular transportation. And for example, align with some weather information that actually you are dealing with some fine dust or some kind of air quality problem, what are the effects in your health as well. So these are actually the data is very important. How are you going to collect this data? How are you going to actually maintain this quality of data is very important. When we did analyzing the 20 cities, there had some cities that had the very largest number of the API. And that doesn't mean that that data has been utilized fully. Some data has been wasted or wrongly defined, or maybe the quality issues becoming very critical.
Well, Spain is promoting the standardization work for the smart city platform interoperability, because again, the most important thing is to have a system that is common and open to everybody, standardized, so that we can share this knowledge and go ahead and invest in the future altogether. And really, we have that experience of what is going on, so we encourage all the cities that have in mind to start with this plan and not to travel alone. There's a lot of experience already gained, and they should use all these existing tools. For example, in Spain, we have a lot of national standards, European standards, and also international standards, and that is common in all countries. So please take that information as a starting point, but always think about what are your needs and preferences, because everything is different. Well, we need to give some minutes to the moderator of the session. I don't know if you want to say something else, the importance of the public and private partnership, that's important.
For talking about public and private partnership, there are a couple of things that I probably didn't say in my talk. So selection of indicators is quite a big challenge in itself. So what indicators you want to select when you decide to go through a consultative process, what happens is there are a number of user groups that would want their indicators or their parameters to be included for measurement. Now, there's a cost associated to selection of indicators and getting the data. Sometimes this cost may be huge in terms of time, in terms of resources. So it may actually defeat the entire purpose of measurement parameters. So it's very important for cities that while they're selecting these indicators, in over-enthusiasm, you would get a lot of response that let us get this indicator in, let us get this indicator in. But whether you'll be actually be able to measure them, you'll be actually be able to collect the data, that question needs to be answered first. So you need to move from outcome back to the output that you're looking at, and then the inputs that would be required in final selection of these indicators. So cost is important, and selection of indicators has to be in tune with the availability of data and the resources that are available to you. Comparing cities across, every city that has come to us after we launched the first indicators brought out this issue that this parameter should be changed or get this parameter included for the simple reason that that particular city was probably not able to perform in that particular indicator. Those kind of demands do come when you decide to go and hold discussions, go through a consultative mechanism. These are the challenges that need to be addressed. Getting people on the same platform, arriving at a common denominator is critical, and that's how this data will evolve and indicators will be defined.
Thank you. We have a question over there. Please take the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, Georg Jansen, GIZ, hello. I have a question concerning the existing governance structure of the cities that you are representing in your countries. What are the biggest challenges that they are facing to fulfill the needs of smart cities today when it comes, especially what you just said, to data?
So in the context of India, the biggest challenge is, like if you, and specifically with regard to indicators, of course there are challenges in implementation, and those same challenges are also there in data collection because there are multiple agencies who are controlling the data, and sometimes there is no coordination or sync between these agencies. Getting data, analyzing them, and then finally making a useful indicator is hindered by this availability of data, which is spread out. I mean, we are not even aware that which department or line department or ministry would be the controller or holder of the data. That is a big challenge. And especially with technology, it is possible to come on a common platform. And that's what we have been discussing throughout the day, that let's have a common data platform. At least the middleware should be open, and people can come in and make use of data which is freely and openly available. But till we reach that stage, we have to make best use of whatever indicators are available. If you look at the percentages or the weightages that we had given to the 4 pillars, there was very little weightage that we had given to economic parameters. Simple thing is that we don't know how do you actually measure the economic performance of a city. So some people do suggest let's go for an economic GDP indicator, but it's very difficult to arrive at a GDP for a city. So not using that nomenclature, probably we need to arrive at some indicator which may gauge the economic performance of a particular city so that we can have a common comparator between these. That's the challenge.
Thank you. Another question, please.
I have a little story with a question. We experimented with doing something like that many years ago already, using the concept of intellectual capital of cities, the idea of measuring intangibles. The idea there was that you start with a vision, because every city has a different vision. So out of the vision, you ask yourself, what are the core competencies of the city to make this vision come true? And then you start looking for indicators. To what extent do these competencies exist or do not exist? Now, what is interesting is, first of all, from such a group of excellent experts to get some feedback on this method, which by purpose does not aim to compare between cities, but to let every city measure itself as it moves forward. What do you think about that? And the other question regarding that, how did you choose, Dr. Lee, the 20 cities that you include in your studies? I'm very curious about that. I'm Edna Pasher, and I'm the founder and chair of the Israeli Smart Cities Institute.
So if the decision between comparison between cities and having indicators that measure the performance of cities, so we have to be very clear that why we are creating these indices or the indicators. If the objective is to do a performance audit based on the outcomes of the projects that the cities have undertaken, then yes, the cities should be the ones to frame what those indicators would be like to actually measure the outcomes. It can be an independent evaluator, an auditor who can decide on these parameters. But when you want to distribute the resources of a country, or when you want to go through a competitive process, when you want to encourage the citizens of different cities to compete with each other and see that what are the benchmarks, worldwide benchmarks or nationwide benchmarks, that is when you are required to have a common platform or a common indicator. That's a challenging thing to do. So doing a comparison of 20 cities is definitely more challenging than framing indicators for a city for itself.
Regarding about selecting 20 cities, actually 10 cities last year was actually, well, we wanted to select the cities based on the other kind of report that who actually ranked as a leading smart cities as well. So that was the kind of first group. Second group that we came out with about 40 cities at the beginning, based on the all this kind of other kind of survey data, ranking on the survey report on that. And we actually try to approach the data availability in terms of when we actually access the data and try to actually collecting the data and getting an interview with the city official. We actually shrink down to the 20 cities as well. So that's the kind of the logic there as well. Now more people are actually contacting me to actually evaluate these things. Like Canada is actually Quebec city was actually approaching me to actually measure this kind of index together. So more and more cities actually wanted to have a look at their progress on the smart city development.
Thank you. Any other question? Well, if not, then I will give the floor back to the moderator. Please, Martin. Thank you very much.
So I have one question, if I may.
No.
And you may just quickly reflect. In fact, all of you, if you accept. So we have here Korea, India, China, and Spain. So I think I travel a lot. I travel more than half the year, and I visit all your countries. I visit your cities. After 1 hour of talking about wastewater management and electricity grid, I can do that in any city. Not all cities have ports, but they always have something: water, air. After 1 hour, we end up talking about the history of the city. Very much like, who are you? What do you want to do? And then you're at some point in your life, history. So, who are you? Where do you want to go? And of course, that's a much more interesting discussion than, what are the standards. But it's really the starting point, I feel, when I go around to understand what are your possibilities to move. So I would like to hear your reflections. How can standardization, which is in a way an abstraction, it removes the differences. It puts everything in the same system. How can that be linked to the particular, I would even say, character of your country? Or, if you make the standards yourself, it's easy. You just say, these are our standards, forget about the rest. But how can we on the ISO, IEC, ITU level, how can we come to find a common ground when we are, in fact, we have our histories? So I invite you to just a quick reflection. So I let you go last, Tanya, because so if we can have from Korean side, perhaps.
I think the question is very difficult, but I believe that throughout the analyzing 20 cities, including Korean cities, I see that there are common denominator that, as you said, that there are some directions that actually toward all cities are going. we actually, as I am the director of the design factory is actually working on the solving the urban problems. We are currently working with the 10 other cities to see what other problems can be solved by the IoT. And when students comes out, identify their own problems in Bogota, in Shanghai, or whatever, they have come up with some of the common problems, like traffic jams, on air quality, all these things. So I can see that there's some kind of common denominator, that common directions that we can go.
But that may be different than the direction they want to move in is the same. So in a way, that's input.
Yeah.
And you talk about what is the output.
Yeah.
So how do you advise people with a different starting point, or maybe the same starting point, who want to go in different directions?
That is a kind of very tricky questions that we need to go think about this.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's I put it last. This
together.
Exactly.
So that's even a bigger challenge with 100 cities and with population ranging from a few thousands to a city like New Delhi, which has got 26 million population. So it's quite a challenge in India. That's why in the first round, we decided to actually categorize cities based on their population sizes. So at least cities with more or less similar population sizes are put in the same platform when we are comparing them. So you have a ranking for smaller size cities, for medium sized cities. So that can be one of the platforms. But then that may not be the perfect platform, definitely. You can have more refinements, and that's what we need to work and basically create.
Yeah, so regarding about, it's really a very good question. I mean, regarding about diversity and characteristic and comparing with the things that we are going to be standardized, I think there are several points I would like to say that. The first is that making standard doesn't mean that every city has to be the same, or the indicators must be the same. The methodology or the equations or the method can be similar to deployed into the different cities. That's the first point. And the second is that I quite agree with Kapoor that, I mean, one of the things that to think about the diversity of the cities might be the size of the population. And there are also adding other aspects in it as well. For example, when we are doing our first round of piloting using our 2016 indicators, there's kind of one set of optional indicators that we leave it blank for the cities to set up their own indicators and to do the evaluations by themselves. And after the collection of all of these optional indicators, we compare, and we have some very interesting findings. Some of the cities might be tourism cities, so that is rather with smart tourism or something. Some of them might be agricultural cities. So from that point, when we are doing the next round of the modifications or the annotations of the indicators, we are trying to give the cities different types of characteristics as another set of indicators. So by doing that and round and around, and we will find out how we can find a difference from city to cities. And also setting up indicators is very complicated. So the first is that you have to balance the number of indicators, and also you have to think about the weight of the different indicators. The third is that you have to think about the granular. So that's the 3 points I want to make. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to point out the importance of, it's not only that you have one ministry from the urban side, for example. You need to get in touch many different doors at the administrative level, because all of them will be involved in trying to get the solution for the problems to the city, and the indicators should reflect their needs. We are talking about cities that will have to have a balance with gender, and shouldn't they include those indicators as well, obviously, because all we know that the artificial intelligence will create a gap there if it's not well done with the gender, for example. Or we have also the thing about rural territories, what we call the different regions that are rural. then you can't, you should give the same kind of services to a citizen wherever this person lives, in a big, medium, or a small size city. Also, it depends on the type of country. Obviously, in some countries, some big countries in big cities may be seen very, very small in other. But we have to mix all of this, and that's the important work of the three European international standards organizations that work together. Last year it was here, the World Smart City Forum from ISO, IEC, and ITU. They will be joining again in Argentina this time, and they have the commitment to not reinvent the wheel. The standards that are being produced at international level have different users, and that's the key thing in all this. When you produce a standard, you are thinking in a benefit of a very specific public. So that's also what is important to bear in mind, that this is not one solution for everyone. You have to browse in many, many documents. It's nobody said it was easy, but
no, I mean, it's basically like trying to fix the world, right?
Yeah.
Because the digital is giving us a new dimension. Yeah. And now all the problems we had, they don't go away. They get a new dimension. So in a way, what I hear, so yes, it's complex when you actually have the pan-city view, the methodology, so we can learn. Actually, the processes around this are important. The AI is coming, so even if we are not reactive anymore, we have to be proactive, because otherwise, I mean, even the systems, I'm not talking about like Terminator and HAL 9000, but I mean, the systems will quite quickly, as you say, suggest. As they say in Torino, it's just a suggestion. But, you know, very quickly it can become difficult to find an alternative, because it's quite well argued, because everything is free. So you mentioned the convergence coming together and like sitting here as a key, let's say, methodology, as a key way of moving forward together in this, I would say, ultimate complexity which we're trying to define. So with that, I will like to invite you to give a hand to the presenters here. Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming, everyone. The conference is almost over, and I think we ended with the best, the most interesting, and probably also, I would say, if we find a common ground that we can move forward. We also came with the most concrete answer in this session. Even though maybe this is not so concrete, the most, I would say, concrete actually in solving this. This is my opinion, and I would like to leave you with that. So thank you.